right, thank you for joining us today. My name is Lee Reams. I am the founder and CEO of CountingWorks PRO. Today's topic is how to use discovery calls to make one-call closes. This is an art form. There is a process behind this, and we're going to share some of our best practices, a little bit of science behind it, and kind of set you up to get the right mindset when you're taking a call. So a lot of our professionals, all they want is intent buyers, and we have a system that kind of brings people through a funnel from discovery phases to consideration to become an intent buyer. But when you actually have them on the phone, or on an online meeting, what are the steps that you take to actually make that a successful outcome where you talk to them one time and you can actually secure that engagement at the end of the call. I am joined today with Katie Smith, our Chief Customer Officer. Katie, if you could introduce yourself, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. So yes, as Lee said, my name is Katie Smith and I am the Chief Customer Officer here at CountingWorks PRO. This is honestly one of my favorite topics to talk about, so I am very excited to get into it.
All right, before we start the process, we do go through a couple of things. One is the agenda. What are we going to talk about today? So how to use discovery calls to close engagements in one call. The art of the pre-sale, one of the most important elements to make this successful. And then define what is a discovery call. You may not, have an idea of what that looks like. Identify pain points. Use open-ended questions to lead the meeting. Present your solution. The most important one, ask for the sale. How to overcome objections, and then kind of a review of the discovery call framework before we get into our conclusion. So about this webinar, it's approximately 30 minutes long. We are not offering CPE credit for this. It is designed for US-based small tax and accounting practices. However, any other business or practice may benefit. So let's get started on the introduction. So I'm going to read the quote. I think it's an important kind of sets the agenda, so to speak. So if you've been talking to a prospect for longer than 20 minutes and they aren't ready to engage you, or you don't think they're a good fit, something is wrong with your approach. And I think that's very true. And when you think about discovery calls as we go through this today, it is as much you qualifying them as them qualifying you. So you want to make sure that you're picking the right type of clients that you want to work with. You want to make sure that the personalities match, that you have a good rapport, that they're more in line with, they're not a discounter, they're not negotiating with you every second. So those are kind of elements that through this 20-minute call and the framework that we're going to give you today, we want you to kind of get that data and decide, hey, this is someone I definitely want to work with. Let me ask for that sale. So before we get into the whole process, I think one of the biggest elements, and this is something we pound on with our CountingWorks PRO clients, is the art of the pre-sale. So understand that the whole role of marketing, branding, whatever you want to call it, is to basically precondition your prospect. So by the time they're ready to buy from you, they're actually ready to buy from you. So they don't have as many questions going into that discovery call. So meaning they've used the internet to research about you. They've read your reviews. You've told stories through your copy that connects with your prospects. You've identified their pain points and needs they may not realize they have. So, back all of this up with social proof in the form of the reviews, testimonials, case studies. These are things that are going to help put you over the edge when you actually talk to them. So they're actually ready to buy. I mean, people are buying cars online right now without even talking to somebody. So they definitely can buy tax and accounting services. So building trust before your discovery call is the key to shortening the selling cycle. And, Katie, I know you've been in sales a long time. Things have changed. So like in the old days, it was much more of a salesperson chasing prospects, cold calling, making, introductions, and then trying to, I guess, sell them over a period of time. But kind of share your view on, how is that transition to this kind of digital internet search-based, selling time, and then, then going into an intent buyer.
Absolutely. So I think it kind of comes down to the marketing, like you said, but the hot term these days is attraction marketing. So you're actually, in the form of marketing, you are attracting people to you, leads to you. And it's because they have gotten to know, like, and trust you from your social proof. So I think that's really the biggest transition from like the old school way of marketing to what's happening in the digital age right now.
And I think these elements sometimes, especially tax and accounting pros, They're set in a certain way of how it was done in the past. And when we try to push putting your best foot forward, using social proof, attracting 5-star reviews, these are the reasons we do it, because we want to pre-sell the client. When we try to tell stories in your copy, we're pre-selling the client. So, if you start here, by the time you go to this discovery call, hopefully they're ready to roll. So what is the discovery call? It's a 15 to 30-minute meeting where you get to know each other and qualify each other. Make your calendar readily available, and discovery call is easy to schedule. What I mean by that is, place a calendar link or the CountingWorks PRO calendar directly embedded in your website, right? So make it easy. If they've done all this research, they've been pre-sold. Now don't make it so they're emailing you or setting up another form or calling your office and no one's answering. Make it so they can immediately get into that queue to talk to you at the next opportunity. Remember, your prospect wants something. So either an end to their pain or a dream come true. I like to play off of both of them when you're actually going through the discovery call. And we'll kind of explain to you a little bit more of what that means. So it's your job to find out what that is. So you begin your conversation there. So let's go into the big one. Identify your target's pain points. And this is something that the reason I say this, where you may be having different target audiences. So you might have different pain points for each audience. So the exercise we want you to go through is, okay, write down your target client's pain points, just in each one. So if you're going after dentists, for example, and you're going after restaurant owners, and you're going after IRS tax problems or payroll, tax problems, each one of those, as far as your target audience, is going to have a different set of pain points. So I want you to spend the time, literally, if you have a digital notepad, whatever, just go through each one. What is your target? What are their pain points? Write them down. So recognize that these pain points might be different for each niche, right? So that's why I was saying, don't just do one globally for all clients. So once the pain points are defined, you may need several approaches to get started. And these are kind of areas. So when you're selling, Katie, like when you're talking to a prospect, what do you have in mind when you're thinking about their pain points, and how do you use that through the conversation?
Well, what I do is I always think about who is my ideal client that I currently have, or maybe I don't have my ideal client yet, but I've got colleagues in the same industry as mine that I'm picking their brain on what the pain points were for their ideal client. And you want to sound like you know who you're talking to. So what do I mean by that? I mean, like, also helping them like almost discover the pain point, because they might not even know it. But if you're helping them see and feel that pain point, they're going to trust you further to then bring a solution to them.
Yeah, and I think that is an important element of this, because that's why storytelling is so important. And we're moving more of our marketing collateral and our website's landing pages to storytelling, because as Katie said, not all people know they actually need your service. So it's almost like this aha moment when they're reading a story, and if it makes sense to them, and they go, whoa, wait a second, you're basically solving a problem they didn't even know they had. That's why going through their pain points is going to help you develop that story and be a little more defined. So it speaks to more people. So identify their pain points to start.
I'm so sorry, Lee. Can I add one more thing to that?
Yep.
That last slide is, you also want to know where they're trying to get, right? Because they might have some pain right now that's completely just a little portion, or I was going to say unrelated, but that's not the right term, but it might just be a portion of where they're trying to go. So by also figuring out like the end game of where they're trying to go can also help you speak to the pain points and then again offer that solution. So I just wanted to add that in there too.
Well, that's slide 9. What are your dream outcomes? And I think this is important. So we're starting talking more and more about humans, and people forget that your clients are humans. So all humans love hope and seek success in your own day-to-day. There's nothing worse than waking up and, oh, I'm doing the same old, same old. So you want to, you're hoping, hey, this is a new day. I'm going to be able to, make my dreams come true. And the whole goal here is to make them think that you are a part of that solution. So if I work with, Lee Reams and Associates, I'll be closer to that success than I would if I didn't. So identify what that successful outcome is for each prospect. And the reason I say that is success is not always money. For your clients, it might be saving time. freedom, that's a big deal we've seen right now. People have uprooted, changed lifestyles, changed careers based on freedom. So, they feel the pandemic has changed the way they can work. They may not want to put in the same amount of hours, whatever it is. So lifestyle, et cetera. So I'm just getting an idea here is you need to make sure when you're going through the discovery call that you identify what are your client's dream outcomes and make sure you can include that in your pitch a little bit. I think that's what you were talking about on the last one, right, Katie?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to move on. Now get personal. Yes. And one of the things that we like to say is do your homework on your prospect beforehand. So, this is issue one, and then issue two is the whole open-ended questions. But when you understand your client a little bit more, so let's say they are a new prospect, they weren't a referral, you don't know who they are, Google them. What business are they in? What can you find about them online? Get as much insight as you can, because when you start the conversation, and maybe you know some people that they know, maybe you know some people in their industry, better yet, you've worked with clients that are similar to theirs and you can share those experiences. So I think that's something that the better prepared you are, the more likely you're going to have. We always say, like, start your sales calls with a bang. That's kind of this idea. It's like, hey, right away, I'm on a positive note. I've taken insight into you. I've actually taken the time to kind of get to know you already. And I think that's going to open them up to be more approachable during the discovery call, which leads me into the open-ended questions. So these are things that you can ask, and it starts the dialogue where the client is speaking and you're listening. Okay. So what keeps you up at night? What is bothering you most? And with these things, you can also identify where you tailor the conversation, right? So if they're telling you that what's keeping them up at night is cash flow issues, your solution can be geared towards how you have helped other clients, straighten out their cash flow issues, whether that means getting payment quicker, changing the way they charge, terms, going on credit cards, things like that. So there's a bunch of different ways that you automatically, by opening it up to the client to give you insight, you can tailor your message. So, what have you tried that didn't work? So maybe there's another CPA they worked with or an EA they worked with, and they will actually be telling you what elements made them change that relationship. Maybe it was responsiveness. Maybe they didn't trust them enough. Maybe they didn't think they had the technical acumen to do something. And then also go into the positive. Say, hey, what is working for you now? Because then you can say, okay, that's great. This is going well. We can even make it go even better. So, and then we like the last one. What is your best outcome from working with a pro? So really get an idea of what are those things, those 2 or 3 elements that are how they're making that decision. You're going to already know. And then if you're using these open-ended questions, tailor the message around this. So I know, Katie, you have a lot of experience selling things. Kind of what is the most successful from an open-ended question when you're, kind of meeting with clients? What has been the most successful strategy for you?
Well, I love how you said make it personal beforehand. That just helps so much build rapport, because the start of the conversation, your goal should be building rapport, and you're doing that through the research that you've done prior to the call. And then you just want to let them know, like, hey, this is kind of a get to know you, want to make sure that it's a fit on both sides. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to start by asking a couple of questions just to further see, how I can help you and make sure it's a fit. I like to kind of start that way, and I coach people to do that, because oftentimes people come to me calling me saying, like, I feel like I'm kind of asking them all these questions. It's almost like an interrogation. Like, we got to get that out of our heads. It's just simply a get to know you. It's why we call it a discovery call, and the open-ended questions, so that they don't answer yes or no. And that's what we mean by open-ended questions, because sometimes I've had people be confused on that. But that's what I would add to this.
You mean you think a yes or no doesn't get you anywhere?
Right.
Well,
it's hard to then roll off of a yes or no. So open-ended is definitely the best approach.
Yeah, and this brings us in. Okay, now we're asking these open-ended questions. So now what? Guess what? Listen, and then frame the conversation. So basically, the way I look at it is you set the agenda. You stay in control of the sequence of questions that you're moving through. We see this often where, if you open it up where the client takes over the conversation, you're going to be there for 45 minutes or an hour. You're going to be giving free advice that is not pushing the real goal of the discovery call. Are we a right fit to work with each other? And then have I convinced you enough to decide to choose me? So most people have 2 or 3 core issues that they want you to solve or they need solving. And that's what you're using the open-ended questions to figure out. So your goal is to listen to what those are. Based on their main issues, frame the solution around their needs. I think that listening is is something that everyone can work on. And especially when you're trying to sell, you don't have to really say that much sometimes. Listen, and then you can frame and guide the client through the solution. I think you're getting to the end game much faster by following that approach. But
Yes.
And Katie, you've had issues where the conversations go south, and then how do you, even when you're talking to our sales team, how do you coach them to kind of, take control again?
Yeah, absolutely. So you have to own your time and always let the prospect know you have a hard stop. Even if you do or not. And I know that sounds funny, but in a sales conversation, they're not supposed to be long. You're still getting to know each other. And it's not, I use the phrase spray and pray. So you're spraying information and you're hoping it resonates. That never works. And that's also when you're trying to lead with facts. No one that never hits home as much as storytelling. So own your time is the first one. Definitely listen, as Lee said. And then the last thing I want to hit on is repeating back what they shared with you so that you are 100% clear on what their pain points are. We don't want to have any gray area here. So from what I'm hearing, you're having trouble with cash flow every month. Am I understanding this correctly? You want them to say yes. So that way everyone is on the same page.
Yeah, and it just gets us again to the end result. So you've been listening, you've kind of started guiding them through the process. So now it's time to present your solution. So the answer to their problems is you. And the reason I have you underlined here is you need to be very confident. I think we talk about this in future slides, but one of the things I see is a sales cycle where, the person doing the selling isn't passionate about it. They don't sound confident. They don't. There's no emotion behind it, and especially with tax accountants, sometimes I think that becomes a challenge. So start by sharing your personal insights on what the prospect is missing from their current situation and what you provide. Let them know what it's like to work with you, including whether that be transparent fees and making it so you're making it much easier. I say all the time, take the friction out of the buying process, and that is what I mean here. It's the easier you make it, the less their brain has to work, the less they have to kind of go through their own objections in their mind. So those are things that make it easier to close. So explain the time frame. This is giving me a clear picture of what it's going to be like to work with you and what are the expected results. So how long will it take? If you do this, this is where this will be the outcome. And those are the kind of things that really start positioning what you're trying to do, your solution, in the mind of your buyer. So I think that's really important. I don't know, Katie, you would like to say confidence. How do you try to instill, or what would be your, best advice on building confidence?
I just think, hold posture when you're talking because obviously you're in business, you have clients, you know what you bring to the table. Regardless how big your clientele is, have confidence that you've been able to help and serve that amount of people and know that you have something to offer. And so just holding some posture while you are communicating with people, I think goes a long way.
Yes, it does. Which leads me to my favorite thing, take the risk out of saying yes. So alleviate the risk of buying your solution. And what do we mean by that? So pre-selling hopefully has them 90% there. You feel free to look at any of your clients, right? And just make it so it's relatable, a scenario that you have had that's very similar to what your prospect is saying to you today. So utilize case studies and other client success to relate to your prospect. They will feel more comfortable. They'll feel that you get them, okay? And this helps you establish a personal connection with your prospect. So address your prospect's concerns about the risk. So hopefully if you've done your job well, their barriers or their risk tolerance is going to be much lower. They're not going to feel like they're wasting money. They're actually getting a return on their money, right? So there's less risk in deciding to choose you. And I think this is an important element of how to get them to say yes, which goes into my idea or concept about building trust. And I think this is important. So a trusted advisor is a significant advantage over its competitors. So what do I mean by that? If someone is comparing you to maybe 2 or 3 other firms, and you have built more trust, and the way you do that is establishing your expertise. Are you an influencer? Are you well known within the industry? Have you been quoted in trades? This goes back to the reviews, of course. So, do you have a ton of 5-star testimonials? Are you mentioned in local blogs or blogs about that specific niche that you might be targeting? Data backs this up. So, data by Harvard Business Review says only 18% of salespeople are trusted, right? So, if you feel like you're being sold something, it's a big impediment to success, right? So a trusted advisor will be much more effective since their advice will be followed. And this goes to after you sell them as well. So nothing's worse than you bring on a client and you start giving advice and they listen to half of it. They're not going to get the kind of results that they need. So the idea here is that if we can pre-sell them, if we can build trust through this discovery call process, by the time they are engaged and they become an onboard client, the odds of them listening to you and following your advice more than they would without this is going to make your job a lot easier. You're not going to be doing as much convincing to explain every single piece of advice that you're putting there. So, Katie, some of the things, how do you build trust when you're talking to prospects?
How do I build trust when let me say what I was going to say, and then I will answer your question, Lee. How you do anything is how you do everything. And so what have they been seeing you do up until this point helps a lot with the building of trust in you. So were they relying on you for a monthly newsletter? Were they relying on you with your social media posts, like looking to you for advice or information, being an expert in the field? And then when I'm talking to people, at CountingWorks PRO and building that trust, it's just like kind of the steps that we've been talking about already. I wouldn't say it's anything other than what we've been saying. I try to find what they're looking for. I give examples of successful pros that we help and see if it's a fit. And again, that's kind of where the posture comes in too. Like, we will definitely help you if it's a mutual fit.
Right. And I think part of the thing is, prospects or your clients they warm up and trust practices who they think are masters of their craft, right? So they think that, if their assumption is that more than your competitor, the reality is, you're going to start the relationship off a lot stronger. So those are kind of the elements. And a lot of what we do at CountingWorks PRO is help build that trust pre-sale. But I want to make sure that this trust building is going on during the discovery call. So which leads me to my next one. I'm going to let Katie speak a lot about this, but you have to ask for the sale. So, literally, as easy as this is, when shall we start? And this goes back to my confidence thing. So confidence is required in order to ask for the engagement. Many pros just don't have that in them. And, why go through this whole process if you're not willing to say, hey, you know what? I can help you. I want to be that person that helps you. I want to see you succeed. So when should we start? So many tax and accounting pros, I think, leave money on the table because they are afraid to ask. So do not be afraid to be transparent. Tell them exactly what you're doing, what you're going to do for them. I think these are key elements that a lot of times, this is one of the biggest challenges we see with the tax and accounting space. So Katie, I know you have a lot to say on this one, but why don't you take it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when you get to this point where it's sounding like it's a mutual fit, you want to repeat where their pain points are. You want to speak to how you've helped others with those same exact pain points. You have shared success stories and how you've helped people with those same pain points. And then you want to also walk them through what the onboarding process looks like. So it could be something like this. So it sounds like this is a mutual fit for both of us. I always like to ask that question. You want them to say yes. So what the next steps look like is X, Y, and Z. And so it's very assumptive, but both of you are on the same page because you've gotten the person you're talking to say yes. So also holding it with confidence in that posture, like you know what you bring to the table, you've helped others, and you know you can help them as well. So never, never, never be afraid to say, when shall we start? Sounds like it's a mutual fit. This is what the next steps are. I'm excited to get things going.
Yeah, and this is what we mean by creating a system. This is, as a seller, as is a seller, you need to have a system in place that walks the buyer through the discovery call from A to Z. And A to Z is, okay, now let's say, when do we start? So it's important. Confidence, not hard selling. It is amazing to me if someone feels like they're being sold. And I think the best example of that is a car. I'm just going to give a personal experience. When I buy cars, I live in an area where we have, I think, the biggest Mercedes dealership in the world, if not the biggest, the second biggest. I think New Jersey has one bigger. But the reality is, when I go to buy a car from them, I don't trust them. And they have the best system in place, but they are hard sellers. And they make me feel like maybe they're giving me the best price. They're going to give me the best service. They're going to do everything. There's something in that always gives me in the back of my mind, I want to say no. I say no more than I would. So what I'm getting at here is use confidence versus that hard sell. And, what would make them not want to work with you, right? In the end, that's what they should be most concerned about. So with that in mind, they should answer your last question confidently, yes, I am ready. And this is going back to asking for the sale. So I'm just throwing this out. I think hard selling is, it creates a lot of problems. You get people that buy a product that didn't really want to buy it. They buy the wrong product. They're going to start the relationship off without really that trust factor. And it's, this is where you can get 1-star reviews. They'll probably be the more difficult clients that you work with. I know, Katie, you've had a lot of experience with salespeople who are hard sales versus, confidence. How do you usually guide or coach them?
Yes, I have. I think it just kind of comes with the territory of sales. It's just kind of trying to also play the long game, because you got to think also people who may not jump, they will remember the experience they had with you, and they can still refer someone to you, and keeping that in mind. Also follow up, the magic is in the follow up too. If they don't all of a sudden close, that doesn't mean the deal is done. So having a strong follow up system is something I also promote, but usually people are kind of on the fence, and it sounds like it's a mutual fit, but they're having a hard time committing. Just also airing that out. Usually at this point, we move forward and getting started, but it sounds like you need to see something else or hear something else before making a decision. How can I provide that to you? And that opens them up again to start talking about what they might need to see more. So it's working together. There's no I here. I know that can be hard to come from a place of not thinking about you and your business, but really coming from the right place with like intention and being intentional, I think comes through a lot.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about objections, but I think one thing that you said that people don't realize is, let's say you're going through this discovery call, you're giving some information, you realize, maybe you're too expensive for them. You could refer them out to another professional. We have found that these people sometimes refer you more clients, even though they never became your client, than someone who became a client. And it's just the way you handle that call. So realize that everyone, A, could be a 5-star or 1-star review, and B, can be a referral source. So definitely something to think about as we go. But okay, now we're into the overcome objections that Katie started talking about a little bit. And I always use the In-N-Out burger example here. And I want you to, and what we're saying here is identify and have thought out responses to common hesitancy issues. And when I say that is there's, someone through the discovery call they're still not convinced. They're still having, second thoughts. You're going to want to kind of have a set playlist of how you overcome these common objections. So I always say simplify your menu of services. And this is the In-N-Out burger rule if you're on the West Coast. But any place that you go and you look up on the board and there's 3 or 4 menu items, you make it much easier to humans to go through and make a decision. And I compare this to a Taco Bell, which has, they're trying to sell everything under the moon, so to speak. But the reality is it's more difficult, or even a Cheesecake Factory, or I'm trying to give some examples of some bigger brands. But basically you go in and there's a 20-page menu, and it takes forever to people to go through and decide, what do I want? Which direction am I going to go? And if you're doing that same thing when it comes to selling your services, it makes it more difficult for people to say yes and to overcome their quote unquote objections. So be prepared to clearly explain how your solution helps the prospect's business or personal financial outcomes. And this is where, if you get some objections, you can start answering them right away, but be prepared. And this kind of, Katie, what you're talking about, but let's talk about overcoming objections from your point of view.
Yeah. And also kind of from simplifying your menu of services, that's also going to shorten the sales cycle too, because just like Lee said, when there's too much, it's overwhelming. But overcoming objections, the biggest thing is people want to feel heard and understand that you've experienced this before, you've ran into this before. And so speaking to that, oh, I understand where you're coming from. My most recent client transaction, however you want to phrase it, was actually experiencing the same thing, and what we were able to do is X, Y, and Z. It's essentially the feel, felt, found. If anybody has heard that before, you feel what they're feeling, you have felt it before, and what you found is X, Y, and Z. That works beautifully with any objection.
Yeah, and by preparing ahead of time, so we want you to have kind of I call it a playlist, but have these common objections written down. Each target audience might be different. They might be using a specific software already. You're, trying to pitch them something else. So have the reasoning behind that. But if you have that playlist, it makes it much easier to overcome these objections. So let's talk about this. This is the system we want. So discovery call framework. Okay. So number one, you're obviously preparing. So you're now ready to do it. So use open-ended questions and then listen. Based on what you hear, present your solution and use some of the information, that intelligence that you got from those open-ended questions to position yourself. So answer some of those things when you're presenting the solution. Build trust by talking about other clients, by sharing case studies, by talking about success stories of people that are similar to them. Once you've done that, now ask for the sale, okay? And again, this is, if you can rinse and repeat this thing all day long. Now you've asked for the sale. Are they ready to go? Yes, you put them through the onboarding process. No, they have a couple more objections. Well, let's overcome those objections by preparing. So you have, common objections and a Q&A, and you have, you're already confident and already prepared to answer them. So the last thing I want you to do is have an objection you haven't heard before, okay? And at that point now, let's start the engagement. So look at making it easy for them to become a client now. So how do you onboard them digitally? How do you collect information from them digitally? Make it easy for them to come on board. A lot of professionals, we did some surveys recently. I think it's up to 60% are still using paper-based workflows. Use the digital tools that are available to you. From the e-sign of engagement letter to setting up a client portal so they can start securely document sharing and messaging you. Video interview tools like teleaccounting. These are things that really make that professionalism, shine through. So these are the basics for the discovery call. You can rinse and repeat this. So as you go through it, we're going to tell you kind of the biggest thing is you're going to learn from the process. So iterate your process. This is a framework. As each person is different. What works for you, your personality might be a little bit different. So what works for me might not work for you. But use your personality and kind of iterate this process to structure your own discovery calls and then learn from each one. Did this one go well? Where did it go south? What can I do to improve that or stop that from happening again? So start qualifying your prospect and fill your calendar with high-paying clients who want to listen to you and follow your advice. Use this discovery call concept, make it easy. So someone is on your website. They have seen the calls to actions. They've read your site. They feel good enough to put themselves on your calendar. Basically, you've gone through that pre-sale, you've built trust, and by the time they decide to say yes, hopefully they're going to listen and follow your advice, right? So I know Katie likes to say rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. But this is true, right, Katie? I mean, this is kind of what the whole iteration process is that once we've figured out what works, now we can scale it.
It's absolutely true. And people ask, what's the secret sauce? What's that? I always say the rinse and repeat. This is it, you guys. Obviously, you want to take note, like what questions when you're, in the discovery call, what questions are maybe harder for people to answer? If that continuously is a hard question for people to answer, maybe remove that from your discovery call. Or maybe people aren't resonating with getting signed up right on that call. Maybe we can adjust your question. What exactly are you asking? Are you asking them the questions to make sure you're both on the same page to lead them to saying a yes for you to then get them closed on that call? So that's what we mean by iterate your process. And then also, it's just like once you have it kind of dialed in, you just want to then redo that over and over and over again. Quality and consistency is huge at this point.
Sorry, but I love the rinse and repeat. It's kind of our goal as well. So that's what we're closing with. And I do think that it is possible to use the discovery calls to really shorten the sales cycle. And, trying to start thinking of your website and then your social media posts, everything you're doing is kind of that pre-sale mechanism. So in today's world, basically we have data. We know the behavior of people. We know that not everyone comes in as an intent buyer. We create processes and funnels for each one of those stages, so to speak. That's what CountingWorks PRO is all about. So if you can take that and what you've, kind of pre-sell them, that when they actually are on the phone with you, have this system in place, I think you're going to see that you're going to close a lot more clients more quickly. So if you have any questions about your program with us, or any questions about expanding or upgrading to our either our Spotlight or our Premier programs, give us a call at 800-442-2477, extension 3 for sales or 4 for the support group, or give us a call at help@countingworks.com. Katie, so I want to thank everyone for joining us. So you can close as well.
Yeah, thank you guys. We're here to help support you in mastering this process. It might seem foreign, but just trust in the process. We do this all the time. We help professionals with this all the time. So you can definitely lean on us for some guidance.
Perfect. Thank you guys. And we'll look forward to seeing you again.